Shalom to everyone from Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York. My name is Adam Wasser. In this week's Parsha, the Bible chapter, Yisro, we learn about a man who wasn't Jewish, who was the father-in-law of the first Messiah of the Jewish people, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses. A little bit of background on Yisro before we begin. Yisro was a man who was an advisor to Pharaoh. He gave advice to Pharaoh. He was one of the three main advisors. But when it was decided to take Jewish babies, babies of boys, and throw them into the Nile, Yisro, instead of agreeing to it, said nothing, and he fled to Midian, which is in today's Saudi Arabia, southern Jordan area. There in Midian, he became a very important man, a big judge, and a priest of the gods, for the Midian gods. He had several daughters, one of which was Zipporah, who would become Moses' wife. When Moses killed the Egyptian, he fled. Well, there's a story that it's a little bit off the parsha, but I'll tell it anyways. There's a story in the Mishnah, in the Midrash, sorry, which is the story behind the story of the Torah. That when Moses fled, he fled to a place called Cush, and there the king of Cush was thrown out of power by another man, and this other man took possession of the city, the capital of Cush. And when Moses came around, the king asked him to join his group, his legion, to take back the city. But nobody could take back the city. On four sides of the city, on every side of the city, there was something different. On one side of the city there was a moat, and it was filled with scorpions and snakes. On the other side of the moat it was filled with water, and on the other side of the moat it was filled with pikes, and I believe two sides were filled with water. So there was really hopeless cause to take over this city. Well, Moses came along, and he came up with this idea that they would take storks, and they would raise the storks, and they raised the storks for about a year. They waited, and they raised these storks, and then one day they starved the storks. They didn't feed them, and they let the storks loose after they were so hungry. And the storks obviously are going to go straight towards food. Storks are very large animals. You can find them in Europe and Israel. And they went straight to the pit that was covered in scorpions and snakes, and they ate up all the snakes and scorpions, leaving that moat empty. And it said that Moses and the whole legion were able to take that city of Cush, and Moses became king of the city, and he married the queen. And the problem was that everybody loved him. He was a great leader. He was well respected, but he would not lie with the woman. He would not have relations with her or have children with her because she was an idol worshiper. Well, the people loved him. But after time, the queen was like, look, this man won't have anything to do with me. He's looking down at us. You know, he can't be our king. He won't give us an heir. So it said that the people of the city asked Moses to leave the city, and he left. After that, it is believed that he went to Midian, and that's where the Torah comes back in the Midrash. We let go for a moment. Anyways, Moses he comes to Midian, and obviously, according to the story, the people there were not so friendly to Zipporah. He met her at a well, and they made her wait, that she couldn't give food to her sheep. And Moses stepped in and made sure she had what she needed. She goes and runs to her father and tells him, you know, I bring you this man. And when Yisro was excited, he wanted to praise him and all that. But when he found out he was from Egypt, not only was Moses from Egypt, but he was fleeing from Egypt, Yisro became very scared, and had, being a judge, he had Moses thrown in jail for, I believe, 8 years. And secretly, Zipporah was feeding him and taking care of him against her father's wishes. And one day, something came about, and Zipporah said, you remember that man you threw in the jail like 8 years ago? And he's like, yeah. She said, he's still alive. And that's when he was let out of jail to help Yisro, and Zipporah got married. They had 2 children, which would be Yisro's grandchildren. Anyways, to get back to this week's Parsha. So here comes Yisro, and here's a man who when he came there, he's like, I've heard all about you. I've heard about the splitting of the Yam Hasuf, the Sea of Reeds. I heard about the 10 plagues. I heard all these things, and I renounced the idol worship, and I embrace your God, your one God of Israel. But he wasn't Jewish, but he was what we call a follower of the seven Noahide laws, which are honor thy parents, do not commit adultery, believe in one God, do not make an image of God, do not covet the, I say not steal, make courts of law um, with police to manage the situation, and well, you probably remember more than I do. Anyways, there's a man, his name Rabbi Don Goodman. You can find him on Facebook. I recommend. He's very good with these laws, and he's somebody I recommend to be friends with on this topic. But anyways, in many times in life, we find that when things are most troublesome, when we feel so compelled that we have nowhere to turn in life, and we're just down and umps, a lot of times God will bring something to us. He'll bring some kind of salvation. And in this case, Moses was really stressed out at the moment. The Jewish people were going insane. Imagine 3 million people, and not including all the converted people from Egypt. And Moses and Aaron were basically the judges. Everybody that had a problem went to them for a verdict of what should happen. So here comes Yisro, judge, and he's like, "What are you doing, Moses? Come on. You have all these people here, and you're going to judge every single one of them? You can't hear all their cases. And not only that, but the whole entire community will resent you because you're the only person that makes that decision, and it will ultimately hurt you and them." And Yisro, in many ways, is responsible for the judicial justice that we have in the Jewish world of having judges and how that court system is put about. And he put this whole court system about the Beit Din for the Jewish people. Every few hundred people had a judge, and on top of that there were smaller judges. And if you read the Torah, it breaks it down in numbers. I'm not going to give you word for word here. Don't want to, But he was an amazing man, and to think that he wasn't Jewish, that he was a believer in God, the one God, and that he followed the Noahide laws, is something to take into account when it comes to the non-Jewish world. And I'll stop at this moment. At the end of this parsha, we talk about the giving of the 10 Commandments, the 10 Lukot, and what they mean and what's these laws and how to present them. And I think it's amazing that in this parsha about a man who was not Jewish, and at the end of this parsha we talk about the 10 Commandments, we can see a clear definition of the importance of the Gentile world and the importance of the non-Jewish people to follow in the laws of God and to follow these important structures. The Torah is a lot of, for me personally, I look at the first Jew being Jacob. Some people will disagree with me and say it was Abraham, but I see that Jacob was the first Jew because he's the man who his lineage was the one that continued. Isaac had 2 sons. One went one way, the other one went another. But and Moses, Abram had like 6 children. So, and they all went different ways. But Jacob, his children all went into the path of the Jewish way. So I look at him as the first Jew. You can disagree with me, but that's how I see it. So when you look at Genesis and Parshahs, and you look at Adam and Eve and Abraham and Noah, you can say these are about just humanity, everyone. But when you get up to Jacob and all the way to the end of the 5 books of Moses, it's basically about the Jewish people. It's all stories about the Jewish people. The laws are about the Jewish people. But here we have a situation where we have Yisro, a man who's non-Jewish, a man whose descendants, Zipporah and Moses' sons, will become the Kohanim, the high priest of Israel. If you think about the Kohanim, I'm a Kohen, descend from a non-Jewish lineage when you go all the way back. But get back to the point, it's so important to remember that even though there are Jewish stories clearly all over the Torah. When you see something like Yisro, the Parsha of Yisro, you you know that every person that is alive, every person that breathes air, every soul that exists in this world is represented in the Torah. That everybody is affected by the Torah, and the Torah is for everyone. You know, we learn that when Mashiach comes, Messiah, that the whole world will not only follow the 7 laws of Noah, but they will follow 31 other laws of Torah. What they are exactly is another topic. Don Goodman's a good man to ask about that. Anyways, this Parsha is significant not only for the Jewish people, but for everyone. This Parsha is for everyone. It is the opportunity showing of Gentile and Jew coming together and working together in something as important as a judicial system. And that, in many ways, by saying this is the laws of the 10 Commandments at the end of this Parsha, we realize how important it is that everyone know these laws and everyone take part in them and follow them. This Parsha is something that I believe combines and brings together all peoples of all faiths and denominations. All peoples, whether you be black, white, Asian, Polynesian, whatever you prefer. Everybody should be finding a connection in this week's Parsha. And I'm honored and blessed that it is in this Parsha. It's my birthday, my Hebrew birthday, and I give thank God for that. I really everybody loves their birthday and their Parsha, and I'm no exception. Anyways, I encourage everyone to check out Parshahs Yisro and find a connection. Don't just read. The Torah is not something that we just read. It's not something that we just open up and say, hey, you know, this is a beautiful story. The Torah is meant to show examples. It's meant to find an inner essence. That's another reason why I love Hasidus, Jewish mysticism philosophy, because it breaks it down. It breaks down the Torah and gives us the understanding of why it's important to learn this and what's the meaning behind it. And when we look at Parshahs Yisro, we see that there's clearly more into the story than just a beautiful story, that there's meaning, like I've already mentioned. The meaning of unity, the meaning of bringing people together, the meaning that whether somebody is Jewish or not, somebody can be a righteous person. Somebody, you know, we're all human beings, we're all family, we are all the children of God. Always look for a meaning in the Torah. And whenever you seem to be down on your luck, whenever things might not be going your way, I would recommend to look in the Torah. And maybe you're not a religious person, or maybe you're anti-religious, or whatever you are, but you can't deny that there's much beauty and helping of peace and understanding in one's life from the Torah, however you want to look at it. God bless to you all. Have a wonderful week, and Mashiach now.